long before he became the legendary Tiger of Mysore. A mysterious prophecy appeared in the diaries of an unknown astrologer. It spoke of a child born under a stormy sky, a child whose roar would shake empires, yet whose fate will be written in fire. For years, the prophecy was forgotten until the night Tipu Sultan was born. In 1751, under the turbulent skies of Devanahali, a newborn cried for the first time, and the winds outside the palace suddenly shifted as if saluting the arrival of a destined warrior. That child was Tipu Sultan, born to Hyder Ali, a rising commander with unmatched ambition, and Fatima Fakhrinisa, a woman known for her wisdom and steady strength. Tipu's childhood was anything but ordinary. While other children played with toys, Tipu played with miniature swords carved for him by soldiers who adored his courage. Before he learned to write his own name, he could balance on horseback. Before he learned poetry, he learned the rhythm of marching feet and the sound of clashing steel. French officers, experts in European warfare, were brought by Hyder Ali to train the young prince. Tipu absorbed their teachings like a sponge. Artillery, battlefield strategy, discipline, and leadership. His mind was sharp, his instincts sharper, and his fearlessness almost unsettling. But beneath all his talent, Tipu hid a secret. Since childhood, he had a recurring dream, a towering fortress burning in the night, and from inside the flames, a tiger roared as if calling his name. The dream grew more intense as he grew older, and Tipu felt it meant something he was not yet ready to understand. Then, on the very day he stepped into adulthood, a sealed letter arrived at the palace. Hyder Ali read it, and his face turned pale. What message could shake even Hyder Ali? The truth would soon pull Tipu Sultan into a destiny he could never escape. A warrior is born the day he chooses courage over comfort. To live like a tiger for a day is far better than to live like a sheep for 1,000 years. As Tipu Sultan grew into his teenage years, his courage matured faster than his age. The palace walls of Mysore often echoed with stories of his astonishing strength and discipline. Soldiers who fought alongside Hyder Ali whispered that the young prince moved with the speed of a warrior many years older. Tipu was not just learning. He was absorbing every skill like a future king preparing for destiny. At just 15 years old, Tipu accompanied his father into his first real battle. The moment he stepped onto the battlefield, it was as if every lesson he had learned came alive. His horse galloped fearlessly. His eyes scanned the enemy lines with cold precision. Tipu's arrow struck with uncanny accuracy, and his sword moved like lightning. The soldiers who watched him could hardly believe that this was the same boy they had seen training only months ago. During these early battles, Tipu earned the title Mysore, the Tiger of Mysore. It wasn't just a nickname. It was a recognition of the courage, power, and ferocity with which he fought. His enemies began to fear the roar of his troops. For wherever Tipu led, victory followed like a loyal shadow. Hyder Ali often said that his armies had gained a new heartbeat. Tipu's courage breathed life into them. The prince's presence boosted morale, encouraged discipline, and inspired loyalty. Even seasoned generals found themselves studying his strategies, impressed by his ability to make quick, intelligent decisions under pressure. But beyond the battlefield, Tipu also grew in wisdom. He studied languages, administration, weaponry, and the art of leadership. He understood that true power came not only from the sword, but from a strong and just mind. Little did he know, the battles he fought in his youth were merely the beginning. The real war, the one that would shape the future of India, was still waiting. As the power of Mysore grew under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, the British East India Company began to feel threatened. Their dream of controlling South India faced its greatest obstacle in the fearless prince whose strategies defied their expectations. The tension between Mysore and the company slowly ignited into the storm known as the First Anglo-Mysore War. Tipu Sultan, now a young but seasoned commander, fought beside his father with unmatched determination. His movements on the battlefield were swift, precise, and astonishingly unpredictable. At a time when the British relied heavily on rigid formations, Tipu broke their lines with lightning-fast cavalry attacks and clever ambushes. The British generals were shocked at the ferocity of this young warrior, realizing that Mysore was not just powerful, It was brilliantly led. During these wars, Tipu's mastery of guerrilla tactics, rapid troop movements, and night assaults earned him fear and respect in equal measure. He fought in the thickest parts of battle, his presence pushing his troops forward with renewed courage. At times, his command decisions were so swift that the British believed Mysore had twice the troops they actually did. The Second Anglo-Mysore War intensified this rivalry. Tipu's strikes were sharper, his strategies more refined. In one famous campaign, he moved his army with such speed that the British forces found themselves completely surrounded, forced into humiliating negotiations. The news spread quickly. The British had been outsmarted by a young Indian prince. Through these early wars, Tipu understood a powerful truth. This conflict was not merely about land or pride. It was a battle for freedom, dignity, and the right of India to stand unbroken. And so, with every victory, Tipu's roar echoed louder across the subcontinent. Bravery is a fire that burns brighter when storms rise. The death of Hyder Ali marked the end of an era, but it also marked the rise of a leader who would take Mysore to heights it had never known. When Tipu Sultan ascended the throne, the kingdom did not merely gain a ruler. It gained a visionary whose mind blended courage, intelligence, and innovation. Despite the grief of losing his father, Tipu stood tall. He understood that a king's first duty was to his people. The throne was not a symbol of privilege. It was a burden of responsibility. Tipu stepped into this role with a maturity far beyond his years. One of his earliest actions as Sultan was to strengthen Mysore's administration. He reorganized tax systems to be fairer, encouraged agriculture, and established efficient communication networks across the kingdom. His reforms brought stability and growth, ensuring Mysore remained one of the richest and most powerful states in India. But Tipu was not only a ruler. He was a thinker. He studied science, mathematics, and technology, believing that knowledge was the true weapon of progress. His fascination with mechanics led to innovations in manufacturing, shipbuilding, and especially the development of advanced iron-cased rockets, which would later shock the British in war. Under Tipu's leadership, Mysore blossomed culturally as well. Artists, scholars, poets, and engineers found patronage in his court. Trade routes flourished as he strengthened ties with foreign nations, forging connections beyond India's borders. Yet amid all his achievements, one truth remained clear. The British East India Company saw Tipu not as a king, but as the greatest obstacle to their ambitions. Every reform he introduced, every fortress he strengthened, every treaty he signed only sharpened their determination to bring him down. But Tipu Sultan was not a ruler who bowed to pressure. He was a king forged in battle, and his reign had only just begun. A king's true strength is not the crown he wears, but the justice he carries in his heart. Tipu Sultan was not only a warrior king, he was a visionary far ahead of his time. While other rulers focused solely on armies and territory, Tipu looked beyond the present. He believed true strength came from innovation, and he was determined to make Mysore a kingdom that blended courage with technology. Among his greatest achievements were his iron-cased rockets, a marvel the world had never seen before. Earlier rockets existed in other parts of the world, but Tipu transformed them from simple fire weapons into advanced instruments of war. By encasing the gunpowder in strong iron tubes, he increased their range, accuracy, and explosive power. These rockets could travel over a kilometer, an extraordinary distance for that era. Tipu established entire workshops dedicated to rocket production, training special units called Rocket Corps. Soldiers trained to launch hundreds of rockets at once, creating terrifying firestorms on the battlefield. British officers later wrote in their journals that Tipu's rockets were unlike anything they'd encountered, fast, unpredictable, and devastating. But his innovations extended far beyond weaponry. Tipu encouraged agricultural reforms by introducing new crops and irrigation methods. He modernized trade by establishing state factories, promoting the silk industry, and improving coinage. Under his rule, Mysore became an economic powerhouse, known for its textile, spices, and handcrafted goods. Tipu even introduced new administrative calendars, modernized postal systems, and strengthened the navy, understanding the importance of sea routes in commerce and defense. His diplomatic vision reached across continents. He communicated with the French, the Ottomans, and other global powers, determined to bring Mysore into the modern world. Every step he took was driven by one belief. Progress was the shield that protected a nation. Nations rise not by chance, but by the courage to innovate. As Tipu Sultan strengthened Mysore through innovation and military brilliance, one threat continued to grow like a shadow stretching across the subcontinent: the British East India Company. Their hunger for control was no longer hidden. They wanted Mysore, and they wanted Tipu gone. But Tipu Sultan was not a ruler who fought alone. He understood early that the British were not just a regional force. They were backed by a vast empire. To defeat them, Mysore needed strong allies, powers with the strength and ambition to challenge British dominance. And so began Tipu's mission to build an international network of resistance. His first and strongest partnership came from the French, who shared his desire to break British influence in India. French officers, engineers, and weapon experts entered Mysore, helping Tipu modernize his army even further. Their presence sent a clear message. Tipu Sultan was preparing for a larger war. Beyond Europe, Tipu reached out to the Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful Muslim empires of the time. He sent ambassadors, forged letters of friendship, and sought military cooperation. The Ottomans respected Tipu not just as a king, but as a fearless defender of independence. He even extended his alliances toward Afghanistan and Persia, creating a web of partners across Asia. Each alliance strengthened Mysore's global position and worried the British, who realized that Tipu's influence stretched far beyond India's borders. These alliances were not made out of desperation. They were crafted out of vision. Tipu understood that the future of India depended on unity, cooperation, and standing firm against foreign domination. But with every alliance he formed, British hostility grew sharper. They feared not just Tipu's army, but the idea he represented. The idea that India could stand strong, united, and free. And so, the final confrontation drew closer. Freedom is the gift of the brave, not the mercy of the powerful. The year was 1799, and the British East India Company had made its decision. They would crush Mysore once and for all. After years of failed campaigns, humiliating defeats, and unbroken resistance from Tipu Sultan, the British realized that defeating him required more than military force. It required betrayal, and betrayal came. Several local rulers, driven by fear or greed, secretly aligned themselves with the British. Tipu Sultan knew it. He sensed the shifting winds, the silent corridors of conspiracy, the changing loyalties of old allies. Yet he refused to abandon his kingdom or compromise his honor. Instead, he strengthened the walls of Srirangapatna, his capital, preparing for what he knew might be his final battle. The British launched a massive assault. Tens of thousands of soldiers, powerful cannons, seasoned generals, and an army bolstered by traitors. Their strategy was clear: surround Mysore, isolate Tipu, and break him from all sides. But Tipu Sultan did not tremble. He walked through the fortress with calm determination, encouraging his soldiers, comforting the wounded, and inspiring the young. His presence alone felt like a shield. The people of Mysore looked at him not just as a king, but as a living symbol of their courage. When the siege began, the sky above Srirangapatna turned black with smoke. Rockets roared from Mysore's defenses. Cannons thundered, and the riverbanks shook under the weight of war. Despite being outnumbered, Tipu's army fought with extraordinary bravery, pushing back wave after wave of British attacks. But the walls began to crumble. Ammunition ran low. The betrayal grew deeper. Yet Tipu Sultan refused to retreat. He declared he would rather die defending his homeland than live as a prisoner of the British. And so, the final storm approached. Better to die fighting with honor than to live under chains. The final day arrived, the day destiny had promised Tipu Sultan since childhood. On May 4th, 1799, the sun rose over Srirangapatna with an eerie silence, as if the world itself held its breath. The British forces, supported by treacherous allies, had breached the outer defenses. Smoke curled above the fortress. The air trembled with the echoes of cannon fire. Inside the fort, Tipu Sultan stood armored and unshaken. His commanders begged him to escape through a secret passage, to regroup and fight again. But Tipu refused. "I will not run like a coward," he said. "This land is my mother. I will die in her arms." As the British stormed the final gate, Tipu fought like a true tiger, swift, fierce, unstoppable. His sword flashed like lightning, cutting through enemy lines. Soldiers on both sides later spoke of the awe they felt watching him fight, a lone king against an invading empire. But numbers and betrayal weighed heavily. In the chaos, Tipu was wounded yet kept fighting. When a British officer demanded a surrender, Tipu roared, "You are blind if you think Tipu Sultan will ever bow." Moments later, he fell, still gripping his sword. When the news spread, even British generals stood in silence. They had not just killed a king, they had ended the life of one of the greatest resistors of colonial rule. The people of Mysore wept. Across India, shock rippled like a wave, and far away in England, newspapers wrote of the brave ruler who had fought until his very last breath. But though Tipu's body fell, his spirit refused to die. His innovation shaped future warfare. His courage inspired revolutions, and his legacy echoed through generations. He became more than a king. He became a symbol of resistance, dignity, and unbreakable will. My body may fall, but my spirit shall rise with every dream of freedom.